So the question is, where's the carbon in construction? And myself and Yannick are going to do a double act, so I can use all of the time, and at the end of it then Yannick's going to have to do all his bits very, very quickly. The critical point about carbon, though, is, and Mike's alluded to this earlier on, is actually throughout the entire life of the infrastructure. And Chris has also explained very succinctly, actually, the critical issue for an infrastructure owner as to how quickly you can make change. When you're only making a certain amount of replacement every year, it becomes very difficult. So the first thing, and this is obvious, infrastructure, big infrastructure, is a system of systems. Each of these systems we rely on for our daily life. The right-hand picture shows actually the last time we had life without these infrastructure systems and what we have to go back to if we actually lose the safety net that we have of what infrastructure provides. And the IUK, now Infrastructure and Projects Authority, defined economic infrastructure as transport, energy, water, flood defence and telecommunications. And these are distinct from other parts of the built environment in, as I said, they're entirely system-based. And you make one small change in one area, and actually that change can get magnified through the whole system, because this isn't just a building, it isn't just a thing, it's lots and lots of things, but we rely on the entire system for this output for society that we rely on. So without these things, very quickly we go away from the very nice plushy life that we have. One train line goes, a cascade of things follow after that. Electricity fails and a cascade follows after that. So resilience is becoming more and more critical in everything that we do. And therefore it's important that resilience happens all the time. I refer to a report on the right-hand side, which actually not many people refer to. The city of Lancaster at the end of last year had a major electricity outage which lasted for days and days and days. It's almost New Orleans style in terms of, as far as UK is gone, in terms of a loss of infrastructure systems. Initially a cascade happened from a flooding that affected an electricity substation, and then every other system failed in the city. And it took about a week for the whole city to get back to normal again. So the critical issue for us is, once created, infrastructure lasts almost forever. It's not necessarily even the 120-year design life that Paul alluded to earlier on. Actually, if you look at a big infrastructure, it lasts for centuries, it actually lasts for millennia. So the systems that we put in keep on going and going and going. We renew it, we expand it, we change its use over time, but fundamentally these systems are the backbone of our society. And the replacement rate is very small. In the UK, I'll touch on some of the figures later on, it's very, very small. We do not spend enough on infrastructure. The other issue as well for infrastructure is it's got a very, very long gestation. So Crossrail was first mooted in 1943 and actually won't start operating until 2019. That's over 3/4 of a century. And even when they finally pressed the button, the government said, I want this to happen, it will have taken 20 years from that button being pressed to the first trains running, which is 3 or 4 electoral cycles. And politicians don't like this. It's very difficult. The politicians want something that happens in 5 years. They want to announce something, and then before the term of office ends, they want something to have changed. And big infrastructure isn't like that. It's just too big. So in terms of making meaningful carbon reduction, it's got to be on a whole economy basis and a whole life basis. Today's talk is about the construction phase, which is a critical part of that. I'll explain a little bit more in a few seconds, and Yannick will pick up in a lot more detail later on. But if you look at sort of Highways England, the Highways England road network is the one shown there. So there's lots of major roads, but only 3 or 4% of the entire UK road network. However, most of our freight and an awful lot of our passenger journeys takes place on that network. We rely on it utterly. If Highways England were incentivised to reduce carbon expended on their road network, what they might do is actually close it, because that's a very easy way of making sure that no one does it. It's a silly thing to do. We all can see the ridiculousness of it, but actually that's the problem with carbon. Easy targets, simple-looking targets have got unexpected consequences. In reality, again, the right-hand infographic shows we did a commission for Highways England looking at the carbon on their network, and they wanted to understand that their corporate carbon and their asset-based carbon. So we did this infographic and said, well, here are the 2 bits you want us to look at, but the critical point is the carbon that you affect, the carbon done by your users, and that's the big blue blob on the bottom. So if you look at your corporate and asset-based carbon, that is peanuts, that's solving the wrong problem. The critical issue is much bigger than the one you're looking at. Likewise for Network Rail. For Network Rail, if you challenge Network Rail to reduce their carbon, they will not electrify any train lines. Currently, the train operating companies, the diesel that they use on diesel trains does not go through Network Rail's books. Once you electrify a line, though, the carbon does. Network Rail own that carbon and therefore need to manage it. But actually, it's a really good thing to electrify railway lines for the country overall, but bad for Network Rail. So put something odd into their license of saying you need to minimise carbon, you end up the wrong things happening for the whole economy. And there's lots of other bizarre outcomes that you can get on this issue. So it's a very complex issue and one which you need full systems thinking to understand. PAS 2080 and before that the Infrastructure Carbon Review defined in infrastructure the capital carbon and the operational carbon and the use carbon is the whole life carbon we want to minimise. And this brings in the concept of investing to save and optimising to reduce. We can actually decide we want to do something that's quite high capital that will have a long tail, centuries and centuries of reducing carbon thereafter. And that's a very good thing to do. Buildings haven't caught up with this, and a lot of the thinking that we come to is originally buildings thinking. So this current concept of a zero carbon house isn't zero carbon because they leave out the capital carbon that went into its construction currently. Infrastructure, fortunately, has actually got rid of that ambiguity and have made sure that we do the right thing. About 8 or 9 years ago, in my carbon journey, like Chris described, I was asked to design a zero carbon ski run in Abu Dhabi. And again, this is a very ridiculous thing to do until you realise that if you put all the capital carbon into a bundle and say, I'm going to ignore that, I'm only going to worry about the operational carbon, it starts to make sense. So we're going to carve a 3-mile mountain down the 60 metres wide through the back of Abu Dhabi, the mountains up at the back. We're going to put a 60-metre wide tent over this basically motorway carved through the mountain. And we've got every PV in the world for about 2 years. We're going to actually power this to make sure it was zero carbon and therefore solar powered. But that was zero carbon ski run. It is ridiculous when you look at some of the things in context. And one of the things I will talk about now, but Yannick will talk about in more detail, is net zero truly possible? And we will argue it is, but actually, again, as Mike said, we need to do not just everything we can think of, but lots of things we can't think of to get there. Infrastructure is the key to making the whole economy low carbon. We produce the power, we provide the transport of the goods, all the various things the rest of the economy depends on actually comes from infrastructure. And the Infrastructure Carbon Review, how many people have actually read the Infrastructure Carbon Review here? Okay, a good part of the audience, excellent. For those who haven't, it's still available online and I hugely commend it to you, along with the related technical report behind it, which again has got lots of information in. Currently, if you look at the figures here across all of the sectors, it looks like it's only about 1% of the capital carbon. But this is dwarfed by a number of figures that, again, Yannick will explain a bit more about transport and energy, where there are these huge use and operational figures that actually take everything out of context. Capital carbon matters now, but it will matter far more in the future. The critical issue, though, from an asset owner is there's the control area and the area we can influence only. And they're the things which actually need broader policies to deal with. Mike again alluded to this earlier on. Reducing carbon is a very good thing because actually carbon might lead to our extinction as a species in the next century or 2 centuries. However, now tens of thousands of people every day, or actually every day, extrapolating Mike's figures, are dying due to air pollution. So there's a current political crisis we can exploit, which is entirely correlated with making things better in terms of carbon as well. In terms of the UK, and the right-hand graph shows infrastructure. The black chart basically shows investment in fixed infrastructure from the 1960s to now. And currently we spend less than 2% of our economy on net public sector investment in things like infrastructure. So we create capital carbon now. We're accruing it at a very, very, very low rate, a lower rate than any other part of Europe, and certainly much lower than the developing world, where if you go to China, the blue chart, it goes up to 50% is their investment in fixed assets, which includes some parts of social infrastructure as well. So, but they're spending about 10 times as much of their whole economy on capital carbon that we are at the moment. So this matters in the UK, and as I'll show in the next, or sorry, I'll show slowly, matters later. But in the developing world, capital carbon is a huge thing. Rapidly developing economies put a large part of their wealth into capital carbon, and we can help influence that as well. So the challenges for big infrastructure in the 21st century are up to 2050, we have to make the 80% reduction, which will be really painful. So far we've achieved it mainly because we've had a recession for a large part of it. We might not be so lucky, I'm using the word lucky and advisedly, for the next while. But actually we need to bring in place all the various things to do that, which means we need to work in the concerted, collaborative way that was discussed earlier on. And in terms of decarbonising the whole economy, it won't be made alone by virtuous householders making a small number of choices. We need to do a whole lot of things about energy systems, then transport, domestic heating. These big system issues, 26 million homes have to be retrofitted, have the whole basis change. Massive changes to make in our society. And reducing capital carbon is important now, but as we reduce the operational phase, capital carbon becomes actually more and more important. PAS 28 has been spoken about so far. Maria is going to speak about it in a lot more detail very shortly, but actually this is the world's first low carbon infrastructure standard for whole life management of carbon. It's a huge first, it's very significant, and it hopefully will be the way forward. Thank you very much. Yannick's up next.